It was a cold January morning in 2024 when Emily Carter, a 32-year-old history teacher from Vermont, decided to clean out her late grandfather's attic. The old wooden stairs creaked under her weight as sunlight cut through the cobwebs. Illuminating boxes marked World War II personal. Real quick before we go on, drop your city or state in the comments. It's crazy seeing how many different places you're all watching from. Emily never paid much attention to those boxes before. Her grandfather, James Carter Sr., had served in the war but rarely spoke about it. He passed away quietly the previous winter, leaving behind an ocean of unspoken stories. As Emily brushed off layers of dust, her fingers touched a small metal ammunition box tucked beneath a pile of tattered uniforms. The latch creaked open. Inside lay a stack of letters, yellowed, brittle, and bound by a faded ribbon. One envelope sat apart from the rest. Its paper was fragile. The ink nearly vanished. The return address read, Private Thomas Hale, -1944, Normandy, France. The envelope wasn't addressed to her grandfather. It wasn't addressed to anyone she recognized. Emily carefully unfolded the paper. The first line made her heart skip. If someone finds this letter, then I didn't make it home. But I need the world to know what really happened. Her pulse quickened. She could almost feel the ghost of the man behind the ink, his fear, his sorrow, his desperate need to be heard. Emily read on. The handwriting trembled as if each stroke was a battle between hope and despair. We were told we were fighting for freedom. But what I saw, what I was ordered to do, it wasn't freedom at all. She froze. What did he mean by that? Thomas's words continued, revealing fragments of a story that didn't match the history she had taught for years. It hinted at a secret mission, something erased from the books, something soldiers weren't supposed to speak about. Then came the final haunting line of the first page. They buried the truth with the bodies. But someday, someone will dig it up. And when they do, maybe they'll forgive us. Emily's hands trembled as she set the letter down. She didn't yet know it, but that letter, forgotten for 80 years, was about to change everything she believed about the war, her family, and the price of silence. Outside, the snow kept falling soft, endless, indifferent. But inside that attic, history had just woken up. Emily sat cross-legged on the wooden attic floor, her breath misting in the cold air. The smell of old paper and cedar filled her lungs as she stared at the letter, her heart pounding like she'd just uncovered a confession from a ghost. She glanced at the return name, again Private Thomas Hale. The name didn't appear anywhere in her family's history. She knew all her grandfather's war buddies by heart from the photos he used to keep in his study. Miller, Dawson, Reed, but never a Hale. Emily picked up her phone and snapped a picture of the letter, careful not to touch the ink again. Something about the tone of it, the pain, the secrecy made her feel as though she was intruding on something sacred. But curiosity won. She gently opened the next page. June 17, 1944. Normandy. They told us the village was hostile, that the people inside were helping the enemy. We were ordered to burn it down. But there were families, children. They ran to us for help, and I couldn't pull the trigger. God help me, I couldn't. Emily's eyes blurred with tears. The handwriting grew shaky, darker, as though the soldier had written with trembling hands. They called me a coward, but when I saw what happened next, I realized cowardice was mercy compared to what they did. A tear fell onto the page. Emily wiped it away quickly, almost apologizing to the ghost who wrote it. Thomas Hale was confessing to something that shouldn't have been possible. The Normandy operation was hailed as one of the most heroic missions of World War II. Soldiers were remembered as liberators, not monsters, but the next paragraph made her blood run cold. We were told to erase the village of Dervin. It wasn't on any map. We made sure of that. The orders came from someone high up, someone who said the villagers had to disappear because of what they'd seen. Emily's throat tightened. Dervin? She had never heard of that name before. Not in her studies, not in any World War II archive. She reached for her laptop and began searching Dervin Village, Normandy. 1944. Double quotes, nothing. No results. It was as if the place had never existed. Her mind began to race. Was this letter a hoax? A forgotten story that had lost context? She needed answers. That night, she sat by her fireplace, the letter beside her, and called her friend Mark Jensen, a historian who specialized in World War II documents. When she told him the details, he paused. "Emily," he said slowly, "I've heard whispers about a classified operation, something called Project Sable. It involved civilian cover-ups during the Normandy push. But no one's ever proven it existed." Emily frowned. "So this could be real?" "Maybe," Mark replied. "But if it is, you've just found something that could rewrite military history." She looked again at the fragile paper on her coffee table, glowing under the lamplight like a relic of gilt. At the bottom of the second page, one more line was written faint, almost invisible, as though Hale had pressed the pen down too. "The last drop of ink. If you find this, go to the coordinates on the back of this page." They buried more than men there. Emily flipped the paper. There was numbers written in hurried strokes. 49.276 N, 0.703 WCOORDINATS. In the heart of Normandy, she sat in silence for a long moment, her heart pounding in her chest. Her grandfather had kept this box safe all his life. But why? And what did he know about Thomas Hale? The next morning, Emily woke with one thought looping through her mind. 49.276 N, 0.703 W. The coordinates felt like a whisper she couldn't ignore. Her teaching job could wait. Her life, her routine, all of it seemed insignificant compared to the mystery calling her from across the ocean. She booked a flight to France that very day, her heart both terrified and alive in a way it hadn't been in years. As the plane cut through the clouds, Emily stared out the window, clutching the worn letter in her hands. She thought about Thomas Hale, a man who had probably died in a muddy field, his final truth buried with him. Why had her grandfather kept Hale's letter? Were they friends? Was he one of the soldiers Hale wrote about? When she landed in Caen, Normandy, the air felt heavy, as if it remembered too much. She rented a small car and followed the GPS deep into the countryside. The villages she passed were quiet, framed by stone houses and narrow lanes, their walls still bearing faint scars of old bullets. After nearly an hour, she reached a sign that read "Private Property. No trespassing." The GPS marker pulsed just beyond the field ahead, an overgrown meadow surrounded by forests. Emily parked her car on the roadside and walked the rest of the way. The wind was cold, biting at her skin, and the tall grass whispered secrets. With every step. At the center of the clearing stood a crumbling stone well, half buried under vines. It looked ancient, far older than World War II. But what caught her eye were the rusted metal fragments scattered around it, a helmet, twisted badges, a corroded dog tag. She crouched, brushing the dirt aside, and froze when she read the name. Private Thomas Hale. Her breath caught in her throat. She took out her phone, snapping pictures. The ground around the well seemed disturbed, uneven, as if something beneath had once been dug up or buried. Emily felt a strange pull toward the place, like it was alive, humming faintly with the weight of forgotten souls. As she stood there, the clouds rolled in, and thunder rumbled in the distance. She turned to head back to the car and nearly screamed. An old man stood at the edge of the clearing, watching her. He wore a long coat and a wool cap, his face wrinkled, his eyes a piercing gray that didn't blink. "You shouldn't be here," he said quietly, his English touched by a French accent. Emily's heart raced. "Do you know what this place is?" she asked. The man's expression didn't change. "You're looking for ghosts," he said. "But ghosts don't like to be found." She took a step forward. "Please, I'm looking for the truth. About a soldier Thomas Hale." The man's jaw tightened. His eyes darted to the letter in her hand. Then, after a long silence, he whispered, "Hale." He wasn't supposed to be remembered. Emily's skin prickled. What happened here? He looked toward the old well. You wouldn't believe me if I told you. Try me." The man sighed, the sound heavy with years of regret. During the war, this wasn't just a village. It was a hiding place for people the army wanted gone. British, French, even Americans who saw too much. They buried the evidence here. Soldiers who refused the order were marked as traitors. He met her eyes. Thomas Hale was one of them. Your grandfather, too, maybe. Emily's chest tightened. My grandfather? Are you saying he... But before she could finish, the man turned and started walking away. Go home, Miss Carter. Leave the dead where they belong. Wait! She shouted, chasing after him. But by the time she reached the tree line, he was gone, vanished into the mist. She stood there, alone again, with the sound of wind rustling through the grass and the ghost of Dervin whispering beneath her feet. When she looked back at the pilot, well, she noticed something she hadn't before. A small, rusted tin box wedged in the stones, barely visible under moss. Her fingers shook as she pulled it free. Inside was another letter, and it was addressed to James Carter. Emily's fingers trembled as she lifted the rusted tin box from the stones. The metal screeched slightly, as if resisting her touch. Inside, wrapped in a piece of oil-stained cloth, lay a folded letter, its edges eaten by time. The faint ink on the envelope read, "To Corporal James Carter from Private Thomas Hale." Her heart stopped. Her grandfather. The cold wind swept through the field as if the earth itself exhaled. Emily sat down on the damp grass, clutching the letter to her chest for a moment. Afraid to open it, afraid of what it might say. Then, with a breath that tasted of rain and fear, she unfolded the fragile paper. James, if you're reading this, then I didn't make it out of Dervin alive. But I pray that at least you did, and that you had the courage I didn't. They told us to burn everything, to erase the people, the evidence, the names. But I couldn't. You couldn't either. I know that now. I've hidden the truth here, near the well. The photograph, the names of the officers who gave the order. Everything. If you ever come back, bury this deeper or destroy it. The world isn't ready to know. Not yet. I don't blame you for staying silent. We were all just boys trying to survive hell. But silence, my friend, can be its own war. Emily's vision blurred. The letter continued, the words twisting her stomach into knots. If history ever comes looking, tell them we were not heroes. Tell them we were men who carry both mercy and guilt. Tell them freedom was bought with more than blood. It was bought with truth buried beneath lies. And James, I forgive you. I hope someday you can forgive yourself. Emily lowered the paper, her heart pounding so hard it hurt. The wind picked up, carrying the faint smell of rain, and rust. Her grandfather, the man who had tucked her in at night, who told her stories of bravery and sacrifice, had been part of something terrible, and had carried that burden in silence for 80 years. She looked around the field. Somewhere under her feet, evidence still lay buried. The photographs, the files, maybe even remains. She stood slowly and whispered to the empty air, "Grandpa, what did you do?" At that moment, thunder cracked above, and the rain began to fall. Slow, heavy drops that hit the old paper like tears. Emily carefully tucked the letter back into the box, protecting it from the storm. She turned toward her car, but something caught her eye, a faint glimmer in the wet soil beside the well. She crouched down and brushed the mud aside. It was a small, tarnished locket. She pried it open with her fingernail. Inside was a tiny, faded photo of 2 young soldiers. One was her grandfather. The other, Thomas Hale. They stood side by side, smiling. The caption written below in pencil read, "Brothers by choice, Normandy, 1944. Tears streamed down her face. These weren't just comrades. They were brothers in spirit, bound by the horror of what they had witnessed and the weight of what they chose to hide. She whispered, "You kept this secret all your life, didn't you?" For a long moment, she just stood there, the rain washing away the dirt, the years, the silence. And then determination. If her grandfather had buried the truth to protect the world, then she would dig it up to heal it, That night, back in her hotel room, Emily spread out both letters on the bed. She took photos of each page, then began searching again, this time not for Dervin village, but for unmarked grave sites in Normandy, 1944. Hours passed. Then she found something, a declassified document from 1973, mentioning a cleared civilian zone near Cannes, with missing records and no survivors. The coordinates matched almost exactly. Her hand shook as she whispered, "It's real." As she turned off the light, she looked at the two letters lying side by side, one written to the world, the other to a friend. Two confessions, separated by 80 years, but bound by one truth: the war didn't end on the battlefield. It lived on in the hearts of those who came home. And now it lived in hers too. The next morning, Emily woke before dawn. The rain had passed, leaving the streets of Normandy washed clean under a pale sunrise. She packed her bag, tucking both letters carefully into a waterproof folder. Today, she wasn't just a teacher or a curious granddaughter. She was a messenger for the dead at the local war museum in Cannes. She requested to meet with Dr. Luc Moreau, a historian who specialized in unrecorded World War II sites. When she showed him the letters, he listened in silence, his brow furrowed, his eyes dark with recognition. When she mentioned Dervin, his reaction was immediate. He leaned back in his chair, exhaling slowly. "You found that name," he said quietly. "No one was ever supposed to find it, so it's real?" Emily asked. He nodded grimly. "Yes, Dervin was a small farming village. In 1944, it was wiped off the map under the guise of strategic clearance. Officially, it never existed. Unofficially, it was a massacre." Emily's chest tightened. "By Allied soldiers?" "Yes," he said softly. "A small rogue division, following false orders from within intelligence. The truth would have caused chaos, so the reports were destroyed. Survivors were silenced. The officers responsible disappeared." Emily sat there, numb. "My grandfather was there. He kept a letter from one of them, Thomas Hale. They tried to stop it." Dr. Moreau's eyes softened. Then they were the only ones who remembered with conscience. Many buried their guilt in silence. The fact that your grandfather kept those letters means he never forgot what really happened. He studied the paper carefully. These letters could change how historians see parts of the Normandy campaign. But more than that, they could give peace to the souls who were erased. Emily's throat tightened. "That's all I want." 2 days later, a small excavation team, led by the museum and a local archaeology unit, gathered in the field near the old well. Emily stood nearby, clutching the locket around her neck. The faces of Thomas, Hale, and her grandfather pressed close to her heart. The diggers worked in silence. The only sound the rustle of tools and the call of distant crows. Hours passed. Then one of them called out, "Something here!" Emily rushed over as they brushed away the earth. Beneath the soil lay fragments of uniforms, rusted tags, and pieces of wooden crates marked with faded military insignias. And then small bones, fragile and white against the dark soil. Dr. Moreau removed his cap, bowing his head. "Civilians," he whispered. "Families." Emily couldn't breathe. She knelt beside the pit, tears slipping silently down her cheeks. The air felt heavy with presence, as if the land itself was exhaling at last. "Thomas," she whispered, "they finally found you." In that moment, she didn't see bones. She saw faces, men laughing in the mud, children hiding in the ruins, her grandfather's weary eyes, and a young soldier writing his final words under candlelight. A month later, a memorial was erected at the site, in memory of the forgotten of Dervin, -1944. May truth bring you home. At the dedication ceremony, Emily stood before the small crowd of villagers, veterans, and reporters. The letters were displayed in glass cases beside her. The ink faint but eternal. She began to speak, her voice trembling but strong. "My grandfather kept this letter hidden for 80 years. Maybe he was afraid. Maybe he thought the world wasn't ready. But I believe he hoped that someday someone would be ready to listen, to understand, and to forgive. She paused, looking up at the stone marker behind her. History isn't about heroes or villains. It's about people who make choices in impossible times. My grandfather and Thomas Hale couldn't save Dervin. But today, we save its memory. The wind stirred the grass, brushing against her face like a sigh later. When the crowd had gone, Emily stayed behind alone. She knelt before the memorial, resting the locket at its base. "I found it, Grandpa," she whispered. "I found him?" The sun dipped low, casting golden light over the field. For the first time, she felt peace, not just for them, but for herself, and as she turned to leave, she could almost hear two young voices carried by the breeze, laughing softly, fading into eternity. Hey, real quick, comment your city below. I'm always amazed by how many places these stories reach. And if you're into true stories with real emotion, make sure you're subscribed.